This is David Diaz, former WBC lightweight champion of the world, and you're listening to The Grueling Truth.
Welcome to The Grueling Truth Inside Boxing Weekly Show. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Of course, I want to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser. How you doing, Jeremiah?
I'm very well. Very happy to see that you got my name right this time. Must have been working on it a little bit.
What do you mean this time? It's from here on out, it'll be right all the time.
All right.
But remember, everybody, you can check us out every week at this time on thegruelingtruth.net. We also are available on Google Play now. We just became approved for that yesterday, so you can find us on there, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, and pretty much everywhere else. We're going to start off recapping last weekend's fights. We'll start off with Earl Spence, KO5 over Spence-Algieri. What was your first take on that? It looks to me like Spence might be the real deal.
Yeah, I think you and a lot of other people believe that to be right. Spence, he looks fantastic. I mean, a lot of people were wanting to see how Algieri would do against Spence because he's sort of a good gauge. He's one of those guys you beat to break into the top 10, and Pacquiao couldn't put him away. Provodnikov lost to him. He gave Khan a tough fight, but Spence, he just walked right over him. I mean, I was wondering what stance Algieri would take to fight Spence, and it came out boxing, and I thought maybe that would be a good plan. He's got good size, good reach, he's got good quick hands, but he had nothing to keep Spence off of him, and Spence just came forward, broke him down, got him out of there.
Yeah, and it may be the fact that Algieri with the Provodnikov fight, which was a tough fight, Khan, Pacquiao, maybe he doesn't have as much as what he did have, but the fact is Spence handled him a lot easier than any of those three guys did.
Oh, yeah. Pacquiao made it look pretty easy. I think he knocked Algieri down six times
or something, yeah.
Yeah, 6 times, but he didn't show, the old killer instinct. I think Pacquiao may have been able to get him out there if he wanted to, but Algieri just looked too big, too strong, too quick, too powerful. The kid looks like the real deal, and a lot of people are hoping he'll get a title chance here soon, which may come against Brook, but then again, according to the IBF, he's got to get over Konstantin Ponomarev before.
Yeah, well, I think he'll be able to handle that. But what's your take on him fighting Kell Brook?
I think it's a good fight. I think Kell Brook looks like the best welterweight in the world as of now, and I don't want to take that too far, because I don't want to act as if it's a convincing case, because the only person Brook has beaten beaten of note is Sean Porter, and that was a close fight. So, I'm kind of waiting out to see how, Porter and Thurman plays out before I really have a stern opinion on that. But I think Brook, right now I would actually favor Brook. And the reason I do so is because Brook is a bigger guy. Him and Spence both look like big guys for the weight. But I think Brook's a little more experienced. He's got quick hands. And I think he will approach it sort of like he did the Porter fight, where he'll try to pot shot him and then he'll hold him, kind of to negate Spence's offense.
Well, I think Spence, if he waits and gets a couple more fights under against the mandatory, maybe bring in another guy that's a contender, I think with a little bit more experience, I think a year from now, I would favor him over Brook. Right now, you'd have to go with Brook and Brook's experience. Yeah,
that's what I would favor. And I would assume that it would probably be held in, the UK as well, probably England. But I think Spence will probably get a few more fights under his belt before taking on Brook, or maybe he'll just fight Ponomarev and then because Brook has a voluntary defense, and he's a voluntary defense, so he'll probably fight in the summer around them, and then he'll be open for a mandatory, which may be Spence, because Spence has to get by again the Russian Konstantin Ponomarev, who fought in the Bradley Pacquiao undercard, and that's going to decide who is actually the mandatory for Brook. I guess we'll see. I think Spence is ready for it now, if he wants to take it, but I think a few fights would probably be good for him.
Well, then on the undercard, there was actually a really good cruiserweight fight between Steve Cunningham and what's the last name of the other? You're good with these foreign names. Was it Glowacki?
Glowacki, yeah.
Glowacki, yeah. What was your take on that? I think Glowacki looked really good, and Cunningham, as always, he came to fight. Yeah,
Cunningham always comes to fight. I really like the guy. I think he's one of the better cruiserweights to to ever do it. I mean, he's been in a ton of cruiserweight fights, made a mark there, lost some close ones, won some close ones. But Glowacki, he impressed me when he fought Marco Huck. Huck was, it's that non-lineal stuff, but it was a big deal when Marco Huck fought Glowacki last time because it was his 14th defense, so he's trying to tie Johnny Nelson, the British cruiserweight who had, the record. But Glowacki came out, he looked good against Huck, and then he impressed me even more against Cunningham, who's a wily guy, has good power, good craft. Glowacki he's really solid technically. He throws nice, sharp punches, and the boy can hit.
Okay. Cunningham's a great guy. I mean, we had him on the show about a year ago. Maybe we'll try to get him next week because, the effort he gave was great. And, the guy is still a top 10 cruiserweight. He's, 40 years old?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I like Cunningham. They had him do some commentating as well, and he's one of those Philly guys. So he has that lingo, like hold the phone and all these other things you wouldn't hear on the West Coast or in the boxing gyms. He's got that stuff that's been passed down from generation to generation. I think he's
very well spoken, very smart guy.
Yeah, I would love to have him on.
All right, and then also on that card you had Marcus Brown, who I think got a gift decision against Kolodzic. It was a good fight, but there's no way Brown won that fight. What do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, it was a close fight, but when Kolodzic dropped him, Brown just fought as if he was scared. He didn't take any risks. He didn't try to fight back. He just let Kolodzic dictate and, throw right hands. I mean, Kolodzic he wasn't all that impressive, but he had kind of an awkward style. He had a nice right hand, and he was accurate with his punches. And I thought Brown was dropped in the sixth. Yeah, so from then on, Brown just seemed to not want it. I mean, he was wily in the sense that whenever Kolodzic would miss, he would grab him, he would tie him up, delay the action, which was smart if you're wanting to survive. I mean, good for him, but he provided nothing in the way of offense, from 6 on.
And the sad thing about it is this. I mean, once you know Marcus Brown, the Olympian, all that stuff, I mean, it was a bad decision, but it would have surprised me more if they would have gave it to the other guy.
Right, yeah, because he didn't have the big money backing him. I mean, the guy was essentially a no-name. I mean, he had a shiny record, nice knockout percentage, but he was essentially a nobody.
All right, then we moved to the other card, which was highlighted, it wasn't really highlighted because it was a terrible fight, but Gary Russell defending his title against Patrick Hyland. Not much to say about that fight, is there?
No, not at all. I want to say real quickly, I think Brown, if he ever fights, because there's a lot of Eastern Europeans, that are coming up at 175, I think if he fights one of those technically solid Eastern European guys with a nice right hand power, I think they're gonna blitz Brown. But anyways, with Hyland, Russell, I mean, it was a mismatch. That's what I said from the get-go. I mean, Russell just looked like he had a filling out round in the first. And then in the second, he turned it up, let his hands go. And the guy is super fast. The guy can hit as well. It was easy. But I didn't know what else to expect. Russell looked good. Hopefully he moves on to bigger and better things. I want him to fight against the other Heyman guys. Wouldn't mind seeing him against Santa Cruz or Lee Selby.
Yeah, and I think he handles Selby, and I think he'd have a good shot to beat Santa Cruz.
Yeah, I think so too. It's one of those interesting fights. I'd love to see it because I think Santa Cruz is a really tough guy and he's got good size. Russell's a little on the small side. I think he's like 5'3". So I kind of see that playing out where Russell Jr.'s hand speed shines in the early going, and Santa Cruz in his toughness and his high work rate. He starts breaking Russell down, later in the fight. I wouldn't pick a winner right now, but I just think that's an intriguing fight. I think it's one that should be made. Of course, granted, Santa Cruz gets by Frampton.
Yeah, and my other thing with Russell is you also got Lomachenko there if he wants to chase him the way he said he wanted to. I just think style-wise he's always going to have trouble with Lomachenko. Oh, yeah,
I think anybody around Lomachenko's weight class has trouble with him stylistically. He's a phenom, in my opinion. He's one of the most naturally gifted guys I've ever seen. I mean, he was 396-1 as an amateur, 2 gold medals, Val Barker Trophy Award. The guy's incredible, but Russell wants the fight, and Lomachenko would love to unify the division. Granted that, now that Lomachenko is fighting Roman Martinez at 130 pounds, I'm not sure if Lomachenko is going to stay there. I would like to see him at 126. I would like to see him in a traditional division. The division's packed full of talent. I would love to see the rematch just for, to see if Russell Jr. can perform any better, and for the sake of Lomachenko actually getting a fight at 126. He's been relegated to fighting these no-hopers, and I would like it for both men's sake.
And the last fight we'll talk about was Jose Pedraza winning a unanimous decision over Stephen Smith. Actually, a really solid fight. I mean, Smith surprised me. I thought Pedraza would have an easier time.
Yeah, like I said, Stephen Smith, he fights like his brothers. He has a high guard. He's got pretty quick hands. I was impressed by his hand speed most of all. He hung in there tough too. But I really like Pedraza's style. I think I watched a few of his fights in the amateurs, and I just think he's a good stylist. He's long, but he can move his head really well. He can box. He can punch a bit. That shot that he landed in the ninth, after he got clipped himself and then threw a nice counter shot, that right hook, I thought that was a beautiful shot. I think he's an impressive fighter. He didn't look great against Cherry, but, him getting more experience, I think he'll get better and better, and I think he's a real force at 130.
All right, so I see all this stuff on social media today about Danny Garcia possibly fighting Floyd Mayweather. Do you have any more information on it?
No, I haven't heard anything. I mean, I heard a while back that if Mayweather was going to come back for anybody, it was going to be Danny Garcia, and I haven't heard anything about it. I haven't talked to, any inside guys. I haven't seen any real speculation about it. But then again, Mayweather coming out of retirement is speculated, it seems, every week. So, I haven't heard anything about it. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. I mean, most people I know don't think Mayweather's going to stay retired. And if he can collect a paycheck, beat another undefeated guy, hey, how about it, Mayweather? I mean, I don't think Danny Garcia has any chance. I think Danny Garcia's style is, it's just, it's kind of catch and counter. Like, he likes to take shots on the gloves and then come back with his own shots. He gets a little wide with his hooks. If he did come back and fight, I don't think Garcia would have a chance with that.
Yeah, I don't either, but I think the one chance would be the fact that Mayweather, at the age he's at, you never know when you don't have it again.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who relies on his reflexes like Roy Jones Jr. Not as much so. I mean, technically he's much better than Roy Jones. He doesn't just rely on his reflexes. But, yeah, you never know when it's going to go with those kind of guys. And, I mean, if Danny Garcia emerged victorious, it'd be, massive. And, of course, going into a fight you get, since Mayweather's 49-0, people talking about the Marciano thing and seeing if he could go 50-0. Of course, it'd be big marketing. But, even if Mayweather slowed down, I still think he beats Garcia.
But I still don't know how you can compare him to Rocky Marciano, who was a heavyweight, but people will do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it seems to be more casual fans than anything. I mean, really, Marciano's record is a heavyweight record. It's not, it's not regardless of weight class record. I mean, guys like, Ricardo Lopez went 51-0. The old Irish guy Jimmy Berry, he was 59-0, 61 if you count newspaper decisions. Packy McFarland, in official fights, he was 70-0. There are a ton of guys who, made it past 49-0 before.
Yeah, but let's face it. In the newspapers or on ESPN, it's not going to sell a lot of pay-per-views to have, the chase for Packy McFarland's 70-0 record for Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They're going to use Marciano as the gauge, and yeah, whatever, that's fine. I mean, if they wish to sell fights, then have at it. I'm just, I'm not as taken by it as others.
All right, and well, you also, I mean, there's been a lot of guys. What was Chavez, like 80-0 before he finally lost?
Yeah, he was. How can I not remember this? I think he was 87-0 before losing officially.
Yeah, I think it was before. Yeah, lost to Frankie Randall.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I thought Frankie was beating him in the second fight too, and then Chavez kind of quit. But I mean, Chavez really should have lost the fight with Whitaker before that anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody thought that was a draw. I mean, he was in Texas, got home down decision.
Nobody outside of Mexico thought it was a draw, put it like that.
Yep.
But, all right, so I'm getting ready to write an article for the GrillingTruth.net on the 15 most underrated fighters in boxing history. When we say underrated boxers, who's the first name that pops into your head?
That is a tough question. I mean, it's tough because it seems like the same guys get so much play. Guys like Leonard and Ali and Holmes and Tyson and on and on and on. Who would I think of if I was thinking of underrated? I think Sam Langford. I think Harry Greb is pretty underrated. A lot of the more hardcore boxing fans would be like, oh, well, you know, when we're talking in groups and stuff, his name is brought up a lot.
Yeah, which is why I wouldn't even think of him to be in that list for me either, because everybody I know regards him fairly highly anyways.
Yeah, well, it seems like most of the historians that I'm familiar with, it seems like they regard him pretty highly. But when I look at popular lists and stuff, it seems they have a tendency to ignore him.
I don't look at popular lists much.
I'll
tell you a guy that gets me, because you brought up Sam Langford. People bring up, what about Sam McVee? Or McVeigh?
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
He was a contemporary of Langford. He was shut out of fighting for the title. He fought Langford multiple times for what they called back then the colored championship. Langford had a better record, but McVeigh won many of those bouts. Some of the bouts were draws. You had the old newspaper decision, so you don't really know what happened there. But I think Sam belongs in that conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I think it's unfortunate because McVeigh and I think Harry Wills and Langford and I know I'm missing Joe Jeanette. I think all those guys are kind of underrated. Langford gets a lot of play. He's pretty highly touted. But McVeigh, Wills, Jeanette, they all fought each other tens of times, had all sorts of good bouts. It's unfortunate, though, that, Jack Johnson drew the color line against his own people, and guys like Jeanette hated him for it. It's just unfortunate. A lot of those guys like McVeigh, they got shots early in their career. These were young, blossoming fighters, and they were losing to Jack Johnson. I mean, it proved valuable experience, but it's just unfortunate that those guys who were top contenders, didn't get a shot at the time. But, yeah, I think Sam McVeigh is a good call.
All right, what about a guy like Ken Overland?
Oh, yeah, sure, Ken Overland.
I mean, he captured the middleweight title from Seferino Garcia in 1940. Even at the end of his career, I mean, he was still good enough to beat an up-and-coming Ezzard Charles.
Right. I mean, granted Charles was a little green then, and Overland was, he was waning, but Overland was actually called, stylistically, he was called the poor man's Harry Greb. And there's a little video footage on him, and he darts in and out, got quick feet, quick hands. He's definitely an underrated guy. I'm glad to see that he finally got in the Hall of Fame, though.
Yeah, and there's another guy you always hear people bring up that are like hardcore boxing fans, which is Charlie Burley, which takes me to another guy by the name of Holman Williams, who actually fought Charlie Burley 7 times and won 3 of them. He also beat the legendary Archie Moore.
Yeah, actually, I've done a little bit of studying on Holman Williams, and I find him fascinating, and I think he's a fantastic fighter. He actually drew with Burley in their series. There was no clear victor in that series, and not only on top of beating Archie Moore, though he did lose the return bout. Not only did he beat Archie Moore, but he beat guys like basically everybody from the Black Murderers Row: Booker, Case, Marshall, Carter, Wade, and if you look at some of the contemporary accounts of him, he's described as a master boxer, superb jabber, sharpshooter. Allegedly, from what I read on, I think it was Springs Toledo's article on him, apparently he had power early in his career, but he had hand problems, and so he stopped. He couldn't put as much weight into his shots, and so he ended up just being a boxer. And I think it was Eddie Futch who said that Charlie Burley and Holman Williams are the 2 greatest boxers that he ever saw, and that he would rather watch Holman Williams shadow box than a lot of other guys actually box.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another guy. He was one of the top light heavyweight contender during the late 40s, early 50s, Jimmy Bivens.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, Bivens was excellent.
Beat Archie Moore, Ezra Charles, Joey Maxim, went the distance with an old Joe Louis, lost a split decision to Jersey Joe Walcott.
Yeah, Bivens was an excellent fighter. I think a lot of those, those 40s light heavyweights, I think it could be the best light heavyweight era ever. And of course, it's funny because guys like Bivens and Johnson and Moore and Charles, they get a lot more, and they're generally perceived as better fighters than the guy who actually held the title, Gus Lisenovich.
Yeah. And I'll tell you another guy that actually I found some film of the other day was Eder Joffrey.
Yeah.
Who fought in the early 70s. He was a really good fighter that I don't think people really remember.
No,
and I know the Ring magazine at one point came out with, it had the Eder Joffrey Best Fighter You've Never Heard of award.
Yeah, Joffrey. Well, yeah, a lot of those South American fighters kind of flew under the radar, but Joffrey was excellent. I've seen every film that they have. They've actually got quite a few pieces of film on Joffrey, and he just looks like a master fighter. I mean, he can fight, he can box. He had great power. He was a superb body puncher. He crushed guys with body shots. He had a wonderful chin. And a lot of people kind of compare him to George Foreman in the sense that, because a lot of the little guys, they're out of the, they're on their way out, in their mid-30s. They don't seem to last as long as others. But Joffrey, he lost the fight to Hadrada, and so he lost 2 fights to them, retired, made a comeback, and captured the featherweight title at 37 years old, I believe. It's pretty impressive.
I think he was 72-2. I know he had 4 draws, but both losses were just fighting Harada.
Yep. Yeah, and I believe they were. Maybe I'm mistaken here. I believe they're both split decision. I know a number of guys who think that Joffrey won, and Joffrey's actually starting to get a little recognition amongst the historians lately. A guy like Mike Casey, I think he has Eder Joffrey 5th on his all-time pound-for-pound list. Dude, the guy was excellent. Wonderful. I love watching his clips.
All right, another guy we had on the show, he was actually the first boxing guest we had a little over a year ago that I think was a great fighter that people always forget because he didn't fight that long, was Carlos Palomino. Held the welterweight title for 3 years, 7 defenses, dropped a close split decision in Puerto Rico to Benitez. And then he lost a one-sided but highly competitive unanimous decision to Roberto Duran. What's your take on Carlos Palomino?
Yeah, Palomino was a great fighter. It's kind of tough to excel in an era with so many greats, but he did a wonderful job. And I thought, to be honest with you, I thought the Benitez fight wasn't as close as they scored, and I had Benitez by a few rounds. I wouldn't say he won clearly, but yeah, Palomino was excellent. What's your take on him?
Oh, I think he was a really good fighter. He had 7 title defenses. Guys like Davey Boy Green. I think Green Green to me was the scariest I ever saw Sugar Ray Leonard when he knocked out Davey Boy Green.
Oh, my.
That was, and if you don't remember that, I know it's on YouTube because actually it's on my YouTube channel, I think. But, the beating he gave him, the one shot he knocked him out with to finish the fight, it looked like he might have killed him.
Brutal.
Carlos Palomino, I just think that physically, if he would have stayed at junior welterweight, he would have been real good for a long time. I just think going to welterweight, and you got the Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonards. Those are 2 of the greatest fighters that ever lived. Palomino was a great fighter, just not quite at that level.
Yep.
But you got any more to throw on here?
Yeah, sure. I jotted down a few just to liven the debate a little bit. One guy who hardly gets any play, and I'm kind of surprised by this, because welterweight is such an esteemed class. So many people like the class. When you have guys like, Leonard and Hearns and Barbados Joe Walcott and Sugar Ray Robinson and Jose Napoles. One guy I think who kind of gets lost in the midst is a guy named Jack Britton. His original name was William J. Breslin. And this guy, he did some pretty incredible things, but he doesn't get much play for it. He managed a draw with Packy McFarland, early on in his career. He had 20 fights with Ted Kid Lewis, who's viewed as one of the best British fighters in history. 20 fights with him, and he came out on top. On top of that, He held Mickey Walker, one of the greatest fighters ever, top 30, top 20 pound-for-pound guy all time for a lot of guys. At 36 years old, he held him to a draw while being the welterweight champion. He beat Benny Leonard at 37 years old while defending his welterweight title. Leonard is, he's a top 15, top 10 pound-for-pound guy for a lot of people. He likely had, the records keeping, isn't that great for a lot of older fighters. And he might have had around 500 fights. I mean, the New York Times, when he fought Ted Kid Lewis, they recorded that he had 432 fights. Of course, that's not what they have on BoxRec. On BoxRec, they have him as 240, 58, and 41, including newspaper decisions.
Either way, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, and if you look at his welterweight defenses, I'll probably have to, get in there and do some research and clear things up. But he was the Lineal champion, and he had like 20-something defenses, though I'm not quite sure if he was considered the welterweight champ for all of them. But yeah, he had 20-something defenses of his title, and maybe 500 fights when he ended his career.
Yeah, you got anybody else?
Yeah, sure. I think Barney Ross is a little underrated. Some people talk about him, but I think that era, like Barney Ross, Jimmy McLaurin, Tony Canzoneri, it was just an interesting time in American history, and he had all these ethnic rivalries. Barney Ross was Jewish, McLaurin was Irish, Canzoneri was Italian, and they had them all going at it. And Barney Ross seemed to be the better of the trio. And I think he was 2-0 against Canzoneri, 2-1 against McLaurin, and his only loss was a split decision. He beat guys like Billy Patrol, Seferino Garcia, Sammy Fuller. On top of that, he was a 3-division champ. Like Henry Armstrong, he held 3 titles in 3 divisions at one time. However, the junior welterweight title was synthetic. It wasn't recognized, around America. But he held, at least 2 original weight classes. He held the lightweight championship and the welterweight championship at one time. And he was also just an interesting character. I read his bio. He went into the Marines, ended up getting injured, got an award, ended up getting all messed up on drugs and then recovering. Just an interesting guy. But yeah, I think Barney Ross is fantastic, and I like watching especially his fight against Patrol. It's on film. I think about 20 minutes long.
All right, you got time for one more if you got one.
All right. Well, actually, I had written down Holman Williams because I was going to have at him too. But another guy, I don't think he'll ever be considered an all-time great. But one guy I think who flies under the radar as well, a guy named Tippy Larkin.
Yeah.
And he's a guy from New Jersey, and his problem was that he couldn't take a punch. He could do everything else inside a ring. He could box. He outboxed a wonderful boxer, and a guy like Billy Graham, who I think really highly of, has one of the greatest jabs I've seen on film.
Yeah, Billy Graham could be on our list.
Yeah, Billy Graham's excellent.
He's actually one of the guys on my top 15 underrated list. So.
Well, I think he should be. He had one of the best jabs that I've ever seen. He was subtly defensive. But his chin was made of granite. I mean, I don't think he was ever stopped. And he should have, by my account, and by a lot of people that I know, he should have beat. Not Kid Chocolate. Who's the other guy? Yeah, drawing blanks all of a sudden. But for the welterweight title, he lost a split decision, and he should have won it. But Billy Graham was excellent. But Tippy Larkin was able to outbox Billy Graham. The guy could punch. He had a hard right hand, beautiful jab. He was able to out-jab a guy who was considered a jabbing master in Willie Joyce. And Tippy Larkin, he ended his career at 135-15-1. He was an excellent fighter. Yeah, there's actually a book written on New Jersey fighters, and the author said that Tippy Larkin could have been the white Sugar Ray Robinson. Granted, he could take a punch. That was his only problem. He lost to Bo Jack, lost to Lou Jenkins, lost to Hank Armstrong, because he couldn't punch. But he was an excellent fighter otherwise.
All right, my last one, this is one of my favorite fighters when I was younger, and I think a guy that a lot of people ducked, was Mike McCollum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Beat Julian Jackson, knocked him out, beat Milton McCrory, Donald Curry. Finally, he was probably better at junior middleweight, went to middleweight, lost to Sambu Kalambe, but he beat Harold Graham, who was a good fighter, Stevie Collins, Michael Watson. He even fought in 1991, past his prime, James Toney, and the fight ended in a draw. Moved up to light heavyweight, still a tough fighter. But I think he won the title from Jeff Harding, didn't he, for a little while?
Probably have to check on that. I'm not sure.
Well, I think from looking at the record here, because I just looked it up, it was like an interim title, so you know what that crap is. But my big thing is this. I would have loved to seen him fight Duran, Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, any of those guys.
Yep, as would I. I mean, he was just so good technically. He was so good technically, he had a good, he had a high ring IQ, a fantastic, good size. He was just such a good fighter. It's too bad he didn't come around just a little bit earlier, and maybe he could have had those fights. I mean, I know McCollum still considers, I've seen McCollum on tape, and he still thinks those guys ducked him. I'm not personally convinced because they fought.
Well, I think I just don't think his name would have generated enough revenue for them to risk getting in the ring with him.
Yeah, well, especially at, because a lot of them were in the advanced stages of their career at that time. So, yeah, I agree. I don't think they ducked him at all. I think they would have given him a fight, granted they were close to their prime. And, McCollum was an excellent fighter. McCollum,
I don't believe... If you take him 1984-85 when he beat Mannion to win the title, I don't think he beats Hagler. I think he gives Hagler trouble, but I think Hagler beats him. Yeah, I think Leonard would have been a tough matchup for him, too. He was quick. But I do believe the way he fought, I think he could have gave Hearns all he could have handled, and I think he would have beat Duran at that age.
Yeah. Yeah, wouldn't surprise me at all if he did. I mean, he was an excellent fighter. It's just, I was going to say that. I don't think he was ever stopped, correct?
No, I don't think not even when he was old as hell fighting Tony for a third time.
Yeah, well, he fought Roy Jones Jr. in his old age, didn't
he? Yeah, he went the distance with Jones, too.
Yeah, and Jones was, a rising star at the time. Guy could punch. Actually, Mike McCollum, he was an excellent fighter, never stopped. He was actually stopped once in the amateurs. I found this out doing a little research on him a while back. And you remember the guy that Sugar Ray Leonard fought in the amateurs, the Cuban in the finals?
Was it Duverhall?
No. I'm trying to think of his name.
No way, Duverhall was a light heavyweight. Never mind.
I'm trying to think of the Cuban that he fought. But he fought, a really good Cuban, and actually the Cuban was the only guy to stop Mike McCollum. I guess starched him cold.
Yeah, because look at his career. His final two fights were against Roy Jones Jr. and James Toney. He lost them both by decision. 2 fights before that, he took Fabrios Tiozzo to a decision. Tiozzo was a solid fighter.
Yeah,
he actually beat Jeff Harding by unanimous. And Jeff Harding wasn't a great fighter, but he was a tough guy that always came to fight.
Yeah, and McCollum's fights against James Toney were excellent. I love watching all 3 of those fights. Just superb technical ability from both guys.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the fight I was maybe most impressed with was the Michael Watson fight. Michael Watson was a very good fighter.
Yep.
And even Stevie Collins, Harold Graham, he made the run through, the British fighters there.
Yeah, Graham was a really good fighter. I mean, Graham, he doesn't get much attention either because he was starched by, Jackson, but he was beating Jackson clearly up until that point. Harold Graham was
Jackson's the kind of guy, if he hit you clean, you were probably going to go no matter who you were.
Yep, you're going to take a nap.
His problem was he didn't take a punch real well either. Him and Tippy Larkin would have been a battle.
Yeah.
McCollum beat David Braxton, who was a solid fighter, better trainer. But all right, well, I guess we're going to wrap it up. He also beat Ayub Kalule.
What'd you say?
He also beat Ayub Kalule before he won the title.
Yeah.
And Bruce the Mouse Strauss, who everybody is beating. I think you knocked him out in the 3rd round back in '98, didn't you?
I did. It's unrecorded. I'm not sure why. It was in a pit somewhere. But there were 3 judges ringside. They were my friends. They were my friends, and they all scored it for me.
Well, that's fine. I just want to know how he went the distance against you. Did you ever see the movie of Bruce Strauss's life?
No.
I think it's called The Mouse That Roared. It was on Netflix for free. And I feel like that I paid too much to watch it. It was maybe the worst boxing movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, that kind of.
It might have been worse than Matilda the Boxing Kangaroo. Have you ever seen that one?
No, I haven't seen that one. It hasn't piqued my interest.
Oh, Matilda the Boxing Kangaroo from 1979 with Elliot Gould?
No.
You got to see it. It's really, it's scary bad.
Well, I'll have to cue that up and, see what your opinion is worth on movies. I don't know.
Hey, if you can ever find that movie, or if anybody out there has it, I would love to get a copy of it because I cannot find that movie anywhere. But I was such a big boxing fan when I was little. I'd have been like 10 years old. I made my parents take me to see Matilda, the boxing kangaroo movie in 1979, the first day it came out.
And they were like, son, don't ever do that again, please.
Well, they had a kangaroo or they had a man dressed up in a kangaroo suit. Didn't look close to a man. But it's just, I would tell you the ending of the movie, but then it would ruin it for you if you ever get to see it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I got it on YouTube. Maybe I can download that somewhere.
You can actually, there's like highlights of the movie on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
So if you could just watch the preview for Matilda, Matilda from 1979, you will know exactly what I'm talking about.
All right, I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, it's scary bad, though. It's dumb as hell. But this is the thing.
You loved it as a kid.
Yeah, it's so stupid that you can't stop watching it.
Yeah, I bet you loved it as a kid, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Hell, I still would like to see it. Because it's just one of those things that is so stupid and so bad that I just have to watch it. It's kind of like when I flip by and Bill O'Reilly or Rachel Maddow's on the TV. I just have to watch it, even though I know they're both complete asses.
Yeah, you can't turn your head away. You're like, this is so dumb.
Yeah.
That
I mean, you could go to one channel and see what the stupid opinion is on one side and then get the entirely different stupid opinion from the other side.
Yeah, I like to watch them back to back. I like to watch reruns of Maddow after Bill O'Reilly.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it's hilarious the crap that they think that people believe, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people that believe it anymore.
Oh yeah, well, especially Bill O'Reilly, he's got a huge audience.
Well, so does Rachel Madcow or whatever her name is.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Madcow is correct. Well,
yeah,
I thought
same thing.
Yeah, I thought Madcow was with MSNBC, wasn't she? Or she was CNN?
Yeah, she's MSNBC. That's what makes it entertaining. Because I only watch shows where people talk that I completely disagree with. Because I always figure I could just talk to myself if I want somebody I agree with.
Yeah, you can always win debates, right? You can just argue with the TV. I mean, you always win the debate, yeah. I
don't even argue with them anymore. I just sit there and laugh. It's just stupid. But what the hell? I guess we got to be wrapping this up. Make sure you check us out, thegruelingtruth.net. Check us out on Google Play Music, Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes. Follow us on Twitter @GruelingTruth. Jeremiah, any final words?
Nope, no final words. Just looking forward to next week's fight. Golovkin's going to cream Wade. Gonzalez is going to beat Arroyo. That's all I've got to say.
Well, did we even talk about those fights?
Nope.
We didn't?
Nope.
Oh, hell, you got to be kidding me. We didn't talk about Golovkin and Wade?
No, I suppose we can if you'd like.
Did we miss anything on that? Because I'll watch some Wade fights today, and it just doesn't look good for Wade.
No, I thought Wade lost to Sam Solomon. Golovkin's going to beat him up, but if it's just a stay-busy fight, I really don't care so long as he gets Canelo in the fall.
Well, he's pretty much beat up everybody in the top 10 now anyways, except for maybe Quillen, who lost not too long ago. Yeah,
probably. I mean, I think a lot of people would like to see him fight Danny Jacobs because Jacobs, beat up on Quillen. I think a lot of people would like to see him beat up Billy Joe Saunders just for the title. A lot of people just want Golovkin to reach his goal of unifying the division, but with politics and it's increasingly
that's impossible because even if he unifies it, the next day one of them will strip him.
Oh yeah, they'll do like they did Tyson Fury. The IBF will be like, you gotta have a mandatory in 30 days. Yeah, well...
And then the other fight, Roman Gonzalez against McWilliams Arroyo, may even be a bigger mismatch.
Yeah. Arroyo's he's a pretty solid boxer. He's got a good fighter in his brother, too. But Arroyo, the only thing I really know about him is he lost a split decision to, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but Ruanrong, the IBF title holder, and he knocked him down to the 6th. So, that was a close fight, and Arroyo looked pretty good, but Gonzalez he's gonna steamroll just like he's been doing most other people. But then again, just like Golovkin, I hope Gonzalez gets a bigger match in the fall. Like I don't really mind all this, so long as they get the big fights. I hope Gonzalez.
Well, who would you like to see Gonzalez fight that you think would have a chance against him?
I think he should fight Estrada. They already fought, and it was a close fight. Estrada is in a lot of people's opinions, Estrada is a top 15, maybe even top 10 to some people. Estrada, he's a good fighter. Again, they had a good first fight, and I would like to see the rematch, especially at flyweight, because I think Estrada has gotten a little better since then. I'd also like to see Gonzalez versus who's the big one? I'm not even sure. But Estrada's the one I'd like to see him. Oh, and I'd like to see him move up to 115 and fight I hope I'm saying this right as well. Inuo, the Japanese kid who has 9 fights.
Well, you know, I'm a stickler for pronouncing people's names right. So
yeah, I'm going to have to go back and do my research. But yeah, Inuo, I believe is his name. But yeah, he's a kid with 10 fights, already a 2-division champion. Would like to see Gonzalez move up and get another title in another division to tie Alexis Arguello. Or no, he'd actually beat Alexis Arguello, right? Arguello was a champion in 3 divisions. Gonzalez would be a title holder in 4 if he beats anybody at 115.
I don't know. I don't even keep track of who the champion is of any division anymore.
It's too hard. I mean,
it's just a waste of time. There should only be one champion. There can only be one champion.
Yeah, how many? Like George Foreman said, how many worlds are there?
Yeah. Well, there's at least 3 or 4 that we know of. Plus, you got some continental worlds and some interim worlds and some
Diamond
silver
Bell.
worlds. And,
yeah, Diamond Bell.
And so next week we will discuss Andre and Anthony Durrell's fights against Blake Caparella and Caleb Truax, and also a couple interesting fights. Badou Jack against Luciano Butte and Andre Berto against Ortiz, which I don't know how interesting Berto and Ortiz is, but Berto usually stand there and fight with somebody, and so will Victor, so it might be interesting to watch. I don't know the significance of them fighting anymore, but the Badou Jack and Butte fight, I'm interested in seeing.
Yep, as am I. I think Jack is kind of, Jack looked good in his last outing. Butte actually looked good in his last outing, too, against who I think is the best 168-pounder in the world, and James DeGale. I think Jack has showed that his chin isn't great. Butte, if he has anything, he has power, and he's a southpaw, so I'm looking forward to that fight as well.
Butte looked like he had a lot more left against DeGale than I thought he had left.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Carl Froch stole his soul. I mean, Froch just beat him up, stopped him in the 5th. But, I think because DeGale's not a big puncher, I think Butte started getting more confident in that fight, looked good near the end, and I think he's got a real chance here.
All righty. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up then, since I can't believe you didn't even remind me to go over those fights. But those fights, when I looked at them, I didn't have much to write down about them, so there's not a whole lot to talk about anyway. Maybe one of them will pull an upset and give us something to talk about next week about their fights.
No, hopefully not. I want Golovkin and Gonzalez to keep
I'm not holding my breath. All right. Well, join us next week where we review the Golovkin and Gonzalez fights, preview the Durrell brothers fights, Badou Jack's fight, Andre Berto. Also, next week, what do you think? We'll start doing our own top 10 pound for pound today?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
All right. We'll make that the extra topic after we review the fights and preview the fights. So make sure you check us out again, grillingtruth.net, at Grilling Truth on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. Go join our group page. You get everything there. We've got our boxing show next Thursday night. We will have our first ever Grilling Truth live draft show from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night. We'll have many former NFL players on with us. It'll actually be hosted by myself, Matt Andrews-Scavage, and Mark Cooper, who is a starting guard for the Buccaneers and Broncos, actually was Elway's guard, Super Bowl 21 and the drive in Cleveland. He'll be joining us. He did the Pick'em show with us last year a few times. So I think that's about it. So for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grilling Truth, where the legends speak.